TroutFly today is going to be a pale evening dun. I'm going to tie this with a bent wing for the wings. And I'm tying on a size 16 dry fly hook. I'm just using some white GSP thread, and I'm going to go ahead and set a nice base on the thread. The pattern's not that difficult. I'll try to step through the process. It ends up looking a lot more difficult than it really is, but it ends up being a really nice looking pattern, so I wanted to share it with you. Let's go ahead and take our thread back to where the bend of the hook starts. This is a barbless hook, so I can't use the barb as a gauge for where I want the abdomen to end. But that's going to be about right there. You can kind of visually see where that bend of the hook is. So once I've got that set, I'm going to bring my thread forward a little bit and we'll tie in the tails. The tails I'm just going to use about 4 microfibbets. I'm going to want those about the length of the shank of the hook, so I'm going to just take a measure there. Go ahead and secure those onto the top of the hook shank. We'll let that thread pull those over to the top. I'm going to take a look at the length. These are really slippery, so you want to just be careful about not pulling them too much. I'm going to shorten them just a hair by pulling on this end. And once I've got them secure about where I want, I'm going to take some wraps forward. I'm going to secure those in place. Grab our scissors and go ahead and cut off the butt ends here. I like taking those wraps forward before cutting the butt ends off, because if you don't, they're not going to be secure. And when you try to lift them up to cut the ends off, you'll end up pulling some of those fibers out. So now I'm just going to kind of hold those in place at the top of the shank of my hook, and we'll take wraps back to where the abdomen will start. So for the bent wing, I'm actually going to turn to a feather, in this case from a Silver Pheasant, just because I want a nice white wing that kind of stands out. We'll have a kind of a dun colored hackle on this, and we want this to stand out a little bit. So to do the bent wing, I'll usually take the tip of a UV resin tube, kind of cut the tip off of it to give me a little bit more of an opening. I'm going to prepare the feather by kind of stroking an even set on either side of the fibers, holding by the tip, and then I kind of wet or moisten the tip to get it to a little bit of a point. And I'm just going to go ahead and insert the tip through the back end of the tube here. And I'm just going to push it through. You'll see the tip of that coming through the tip of your tube. Then I'm just going to pull this until I get those bent fibers, and then I'm just going to be really gentle in pulling that out, and then I can measure and see about the height of the wing that I'm going to have, which is about like that. Leaving it in the tube, I'm just going to go ahead and take a wrap to get that secured to the top of my hook shank. It's turning on me a little bit, but that's okay. I'll just come back and manually turn that back. And then I'm just going to take some wrap backwards towards the bend of the hook. And these wraps are fairly tight. Then I can go ahead and remove the tube. We'll come in with our scissors. We'll stroke that back end of the feather up. I'm going to want to cut that off nice and tight. I'm going to turn this back right upright. I'm going to take my thumbnail and pull that feather back, and I'm going to kind of crease that stem a little bit to help this face backwards. I'm going to go ahead and take my thread, and I'm going to create a little bump in front of those to help keep them propped up by taking what's called jam wraps right under the base of the wing in front. And then it should be standing up pretty well. We'll be able to maneuver these wings a little bit as we continue tying. But from here, I'm just going to go ahead and work my way back down to where we'll start the abdomen. For the abdomen, I'm just going to use some pale evening dun, kind of that light olive color of superfine dubbing, so it'll dub on pretty tight. Just going to finger dub that onto my thread. I'll continue to tighten this as we move forward, but I'm going to slide this up on my thread a little bit. I'll go ahead and start taking some wraps back towards where the tails are. And then we'll just go ahead and start taking wraps forward, creating a nice tight body. So as that dubbing gets any looser, just go ahead and reach in with your fingers and tighten it up. Go ahead and add just a tiny little bit more. Want to create a little bit of a taper. I'm just going to take this up to where we're going to tie in our hackle. So before we tie in our hackle, I'm going to go ahead and split this wing. I'm just going to grab this handle at the top, the tips of the feather, with either finger. Then I'm just going to pull it apart, and it should split right down the stem. I want to split that all the way down to the hook shank, as much as I can. From here, we have something that looks like that. This one got out of control a little bit, but I'm going to go ahead and clip some of those little bits. I'm going to go ahead and trim the very top piece that's sticking out there. Going to do that on either side. So we've got our nice wings going here, the nice whiter color that will go nicely with our done hackle. We've got the hackle prepared. We'll go ahead and tie this in back where we want it to start. Take one wrap over the top, one behind it. We'll go right over the top of it there. I'm going to take a wrap or two behind it to secure it in place. And we're going to start wrapping forwards, and that stem is going to bend with us as we come up. We'll go right behind those wings. I'm going to go right under those wings. Continuing to secure that right into place. Go ahead and turn my hook. I'm going to take my fingers and bend that stem up a little bit just to make it a little bit easier to access with my scissors. And we'll go ahead and trim out the balance of that hackle stem. Now we'll go ahead and grab our hackle pliers. Stand that hackle straight up. Take one first wrap all the way around. And I'm just going to take touching turns of the hackle, and we'll move it right up to behind these two wings. So I'm going to go right underneath the back of them. Our thread's coming with us, so you can just go ahead and take a few wraps to unwind those extra wraps there. And I'm going to come back up. This time I'm going to go in front of the wings, right under the base of them. So I might exaggerate and pull that right into the base. And then we'll just continue taking a couple of more of these touching wraps. So I've left a little space behind the eye of the hook. I'm just going to go ahead and take my thread, go over the top of that hackle with a couple of wraps. And we'll pull that hackle a little bit backwards and take a few wraps in front of it as well. can release that now from my hackle pliers and grab our scissors. Take a look at right at the base of where that balance of the hackle is. I'm going to be careful. I'll go ahead and trim that off. From here, I'm just going to give myself a little bit of extra thread and grab my whip finisher. Take a few wraps here, right behind the eye. And go ahead and pull that knot pretty secure. And I'll just come in with my thread cutter. We'll remove the thread. So there you go. Gets the pale evening done. Using those bent wings that are white, they just create a really nice looking wing on the fly. Great pattern, easy to see on the water, and perfect when those pale evening duns are hatching. So throw yourself a hook in the vise and give this one a shot.